I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, folks. We have a quick agenda, and planning's following us, so we will finish up as rapidly as we can. First item is the adoption of ordinance 2010-14 approving the Willows College contracts, and I'll move the introduction of that.
Second.
Any discussion?
It's 2010-24 now.
Yes.
Okay.
That's it, 14.
I'd just like to
Said
hear a
14.
summary, though, from either Mr. Malloy or
Sure.
someone on staff.
Remind us what this is all about, Dan.
This is the contract that was led by the township in response to the energy grant we received. As part of that, we went out to bid. We solicited proposals for 4 different prime contracts: geothermal wells, the HVAC heating system, new windows, and new insulation in the Willows Cottage. So, basically, we opened bids. One contract we felt was out of sorts, so we went back out to bid for the one, which was the HVAC contract. We're now back before you looking for final adoption for all 4 contracts so we can upgrade the Willows Cottage and make it energy efficient.
And these are the bids that we approved last meeting.
That is correct.
Right.
Is it is it too late to add any language into this contract, or can we add a word in?
Well,
You mean into this
Mr. Rice?
resolution or into our contract?
In the contract part. Let me just tell you what the word is. In the under the revisions or changes in scope assignment, which is Roman numeral 6, subsection A, I would love to change that to make all changes, no changes unless permitted. It says no changes shall be permitted unless approved in advance by the township. Fine. I would really be more comfortable if it said in writing, approved in writing, because we've run into some trouble with that before.
I'm trying to find the section.
It's on page 3 of 4,
Okay. Article.
subsections Roman numeral 6, and then A at the very end. And it says, no additional compensation or change in scope of work shall be permitted unless approved in advance by the township. And I would be more comfortable if it said approved in writing, because we have run into that problem before.
Have the contracts been signed, Dan?
they have not.
Then I don't see any problem with adding that language.
Okay. Should I make a motion to do that, or?
Yeah.
Can I go ahead and make a motion to insert the words in writing in section 6, subsection capital A, in between the words unless approved, insert in writing in advance by the township?
Second.
Change is moved and second. Any further discussion?
I just have a couple of questions for Bob and John Wright. I assume the two of you have read this and understand and have no proposed changes to these contracts?
Kevin, this contract was run by me
Right.
months ago, before the bids went out.
Okay.
And there was a boilerplate contract that the township had used in the past, and I made some substantial revisions to it.
Okay. Can you do, and this is just a suggestion for the future, it's common practice apparently in many European companies to have the attorney initial the pages such that the management can confirm that the appropriate people have reviewed it. So perhaps, Bob, something to consider in the future, so that folks understand that these documents have been reviewed by the appropriate person, is to have, John or the solicitor and maybe yourself and or the relevant department head just kind of put initials at the bottom of the pages so that we know that this has been reviewed by the appropriate folks.
I think there's a procedure that Bob and I have talked about, a couple different procedures to put into place. This is, like I said, part of a bid package. This contract was part of a bid package you've been using for years, and we made some substantial changes to it. Dan had sent this to me probably 2 months ago. This is the contract that I approved. I didn't initial it, but we can work out some way that
Yeah, that's all I'm looking for, is
that the
something
board is comfortable with
right,
it.
that I don't have to ask the question I just asked, that I could see that, okay, I know, I suspected you did,
Yeah.
but I don't have evidence of that.
We'll also, to add to that signature spot for the end to have where the solicitor will sign approved as to content and legal form as well, will carry that signature.
I have a question.
I'm a little
Why-
concerned about that language, only because of some history. Talk to John Rice, and maybe he has a little bit better language than that.
Okay.
Why is there information that's not inserted? So some of the heading, paragraph B on page 2. Is this just a template, or is this not what we're approving? I mean, my copy does not have the blanks filled in.
Well, I mean, basically what you're approving tonight is if we look at page 1, you've got the blanks. Basically, we need to fill in the bid date, which was your last meeting in paragraph B. The amounts then done under the terms and conditions are going to be specific to the 3 contractors, which are spelled out on the face of the ordinance. They haven't signed these. I mean, unless you approve these under your charter by ordinance, then administratively, that's going to be done, and then all the signing will occur with the proper amounts, with the 4 individual bids, and it'll be done that way.
So your opinion is that between the ordinance and the page 1 through 4 of the contract language, all the data is provided in those 2 documents?
Yes.
Very good.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'd just like to also point out for anybody who's watching this at home that part of this contract is it compels the contractors to do an educational component. And they have to provide vision panels and mock-up displays so that when this project is done, we're going to have a great educational facility where people can come in and actually see in a panel, see-through wall, what the different types of insulation are and how the geothermal works and how the pipes are running under the ground, et cetera. So I see it as a really great educational asset, and I'm so pleased that this is moving forward. And I would like to thank Dan Malloy and Tom Blomstrom and Mark Janisek from the Willows Cottage, because working with a federal grant is not easy, and it's a lot of paperwork, a lot of back and forth, and I thank you for being patient with it.
Next item on the agenda has appointment of finance director, which I think is not technically correct. We're just concurring with Bob's decision as the manager. So, Bob, will you please give us a little presentation?
Sure. First, want to recognize the Personnel Committee of the Board of Commissioners who, prior to myself starting, began the process of the search for the finance director and advertising a lot of areas to try to get the best candidates for this position. There were 41 candidates that applied for this position. On Friday, April 9th, myself and Mr. Martin interviewed the top 5 candidates for this position. We had narrowed the field really down to 1 candidate with 1 backup. That individual then came back on Friday, April 30th, and met with some staff and a few of the commissioners as part of this. And I am recommending the appointment of William White as finance director with Radnor Township. Mr. White I worked with the city of Brunswick. That's where he's currently employed at. His experience has been outstanding. I've had a very good working relationship with him. Someone that has a high level of trust, integrity, and transparency in what they do. He has high ethical standards, enforces the law, has developed and enforced policy and procedure in the finance area, which in the review, there are some areas that we need to definitely make some improvements in. He has made reports in the past to council, who will report openly, and to the community here on the financial affairs of the township. We'll work closely with department heads and staff, as well as holding them accountable for their budgets. He, prior to working with the City of Brunswick, worked for the Auditor of State at the State of Ohio. At his time with the City of Brunswick, he helped to help the community receive the Ohio State Auditors Award for continued excellence in governmental financial reporting and compliance in the years 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, and 2009 is under consideration. Also received the Government Finance Officers, GFOA, Certificate of Achievement for Excellent Financial Reporting for 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, 07, and 08, and under consideration for 09. In 2006, was awarded Crane's Cleveland Business Top 20 in their 20s in Northeast Ohio. He has helped for the community to receive clean audit reports from the Auditor of State since 2001. And I can say by experience, the Auditor of State, very difficult, very tough audits that are handled. Also helped to create and lead the Citizens Ad Hoc Advisory Group for City Finances in 2008, and currently leads the Citizens Financial Audit Review and Advisory Committee. Compensation for this position would be $127,000 total. Point of reference on that, that is total salary. There is no deferred comp, no longevity, no sick time buyback, no sick time bonus. There's no township vehicle, township allowance for mileage or vehicle reimbursement. There's no cell phone to be provided by the township, and will contribute towards the pension and health care program. And with that, I would ask the Commissioner's consideration of Mr. White for the Finance Director's position.
Move to approve the appointment?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Rice, would you just tell us what's our role in this process?
Under the charter, Mr. Curley, is the finance director gets appointed by the manager with the approval of a majority vote of the total membership of the board. So you get to basically, upon the appointment by the manager, you get to confirm that or not by way of a vote.
Very good, thank you.
Other questions?
Well, I would just make the comment that we all met Mr. White, and he is top talent. And looking at the other resumes that came in, he really was set above the others, and having the strong recommendation from our township manager, and the record that he has, a really record of great integrity and transparency and working well with the public. So I'm very confident in him coming along. I really support this decision.
I'll just comment that I support this decision also. I think this is a tall order. This is a very difficult time to come in as a finance director in Radnor. We've had a lot of disruption in that department with the exodus of the former finance director. We had an interim director. So at this time, we need a very strong, competent person, and I believe Bill White will fill that role well. And I appreciate the manager's recommendation and direction on this. So thank you for bringing this candidate to us.
Bob, just assuming we endorse this, does he have a start date?
Would be July 8th.
Thank you.
No further comment. I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Just from a personnel standpoint, Bob, is Allison Rudolph going to overlap Mr. White's start date so that she brings him along and schools him in our ways here?
Yes, I've talked to her working through the end of September. She will work with him in July and then slowly back her time off in August and then September to make sure there's a transition, because there are a number of things that she has seen to make him aware of, so that there's a very smooth transition, but also to get him up to speed very quickly, and also to address a number of issues that that cannot wait for that period of time.
Thank you.
Bob, I was going to ask this question later, but you kind of threw the pitch over the plate. What do we know about the $600,000 so now? Do we have any more information?
I think based on Allison's in the process of putting a report together, but I believe that on the information that's been received, that it was an error in the budget, but actually the money was actually sitting there. So I think we can take a little sigh of relief that we're not going to be looking at that gap. But the sewer fund, that still is an issue that sits out there, as well as the pension fund. So I think it's a little better position, and appreciate the commissioners passing along that information to Allison and to Bill here, because that was very helpful.
You know, on the subject of the sewer fund, now that's a fee. So why can't we amend that fee?
You could amend that fee. However, the collection part has already passed on it. You could make that adjustment and raise that, but I think also we may want to look at the totality of the program and look at where those projections lie. And as part of the budgetary process, I think that's where that conversation will have to take place.
Can I just clarify on the 600,000? Did your answer mean the money's there wasn't on the line items that you?
It was just in the various budgets that were out there.
Okay.
That couldn't see. It was an error, and I believe what we're going to do is bring to the Board of Commissioners, hopefully in the 21st meeting, just to, instead of just swapping out the budget sheets, that there's actually a formal action of the board saying that there was a wrong page inserted, and that, the right budget sheet is inserted with the official record.
Okay. So they inserted the right budget was passed with the 600,000. They just Bill's nodding. So they
Correct.
put the wrong document.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Next item on the agenda is a discussion of potential bond refunding, and Gordon Walker, who is, remember we appointed Gordon last year, right? Yes. And already had some good things happen.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I was advised to cover a lot of information here in a short period of time, so I'm going to try to keep everything to 10 or 15 minutes. So if I'm whipping through some of these pages, that's the intent here. So I'm going to not cover the executive memo summary, but get right into it. And I'd like, for those who are new to the board, page 1 is the existing debt picture. And there are 4 issues there outstanding. The 02As, which we're going to talk about refinancing, the 04s, the 07s, and of course the one we did last year, which was a refunding. And the 02A is very ripe for refunding because the call date is, as you'll see down in the statistics at the bottom, near the bottom, 12/15 of this year. The other call dates are 2014, 2012, 2015. When you have call dates out there, regardless of what interest rates are in the market for new issues, that far out call date really kills you because you're investing the money to the call date at virtually nothing, and that kills your savings. So we don't do too many issues. Legally, you could refinance the 04s and the 07s prior to the call date, but again, the economics of it, without even running, would be a huge loss. So the best thing to do is just wait for the call date to get a lot closer. But that's pretty much the debt service of all the 4 issues is in the right-hand column. Those are your mortgage payments, so to speak. And you can see that they after 2015 they fall off about $1.1 million, and then to $3.6 million, and then a couple years later the debt service falls down to $2.8 million, and that goes on for a while till about 2024, and then your debt service is about $2.6 million. So you can see this is sort of a typical structure. Most townships, school districts have a declining debt service over time as the various issues pay off. So I'd like to keep moving here. I'm not going to say too much about the rating, except that you have a AA1 rating. That's the highest rating in the AA category. The next one up is AAA. Just so you know, Lower Merion on the east is AAA, and Tredyffrin on the west is AAA, and those are the only two townships that I'm aware of in Pennsylvania that have AAA ratings by Moody's. This report, and I want to clarify any confusion, this report shows you had, when we did the deal last year, a AA2. If you'll look on page 5, my arrow, you'll note that your rating was increased to AA1 on April 23rd of this year. Moody's recalibrated, meaning upgraded, almost every rating in the United States, with a few exceptions where they had a negative outlook. In a nutshell, they found that corporate ratings were too high and municipal ratings were too low, really because the default rate on municipals was so minuscule in relation to corporate ratings that rather than bringing the corporate ratings down a notch, they raised the municipal ratings up a notch. So everybody, Bucks County was AA1, they got upgraded to a AAA.
Gordon, under that logic, is this AA1 equivalent to the previous AA1s, or are we going to suffer a slightly higher interest rate?
That was a question about whether the buyers or the bidders on your bonds would look at this as really a AA2, or is it really viewed as a AA1? And it appears that the bidders, meaning the investment banks and the banks that bid on the bonds, and the investors who are buying the bonds, are looking at this as a AA1. Because Standard & Poor went through and did the same thing, not quite as definitively, not quite as cut and dried a couple of years ago.
Is there any possibility that we'd be downgraded again in the next month, or because that's so recent, that's probably what we'll have?
I haven't followed your recent finances, but there is always the chance that, I mean, they're going to look at this, assuming we go ahead when there's lots of money to be saved here. We're going to apply for a reinstatement of a rating, and it could go down, it could stay the same. I think the likelihood of you going to a AAA at this point in time is not realistic to consider that. I mean, it's always a possibility, but I don't think that given some of the comments that they made in the last report, I think we'd be very happy to keep you at a AA1. If you went down to a AA2 for whatever, they're going to want to know, as best you can project, and I think your new finance person will be here. Certainly Allison Rudolph will be on the telephone interview. It could probably take an hour. But they're going to want to know how you finished up in 2009, because remember, when we got the last rating, it was only September. They're going to want to know how the 2011, how it looks for 2010 as far as fund balance, revenues, expenses. What do you think about the 2011 budget as best you can, and these kinds of things? It's going to depend on a lot on what's happened in the past 9 to 10 months. Are things better? Are things worse? Excuse me?
When would we know that? Before we actually went to market?
Well, I'm suggesting that we move, because the savings is so large here, that we move as quickly as we can. And that means that we could, in my view, sell the bonds in August and close in September. If we're going to sell the bonds, let's just say, I don't know your meeting schedule, mid-August, we would pick a night that you have a meeting or a full committee meeting that could be advertised. We would have the rating a week before that, and we would submit it 2 weeks before that. So I'm saying we're going to be submitting, if you want to move quickly, towards the end of July, and they're going to start looking at it early August with an idea that we'd have it, a week later.
And the numbers that you've run in this packet are all on, assuming it's AA1.
Right.
Okay.
It's not going to be a lot different if it's AA2. There's a bigger difference if you were AA2 and went to AA3. Now that's the bottom of the AA scale. That's but there's again, the interest rates might be, and I'm just guessing here, a 0.05 higher if you were down one notch. Now that does translate. I even know what that would translate into, but we want to do everything we can to keep the AA1, obviously.
Gordon, so we have some perspective. in Pennsylvania, what are the range of ratings that municipalities have?
Okay.
We know AAA is at the top. What's the
There
bottom?
aren't, as I say, there are very few AAAs. The other AAAs that I'm aware of are Chester County and Montgomery County, as I mentioned, Bucks. Most of your ratings in the more rural areas are in the A category. A lot of the ones I deal with are AA, Abington, Warwick Township, Bucks County, Haverford Township, Solebury was a AA. They went down to an A at Standard & Poor's, but they had been that's been an up and down thing.
What's
but
below an A?
Below a BAA, and I will say, we don't see very many of those now but York City of York is in that category, in that low category. Let's talk about the most important thing here, and that's the numbers. And I'm already over my budget time here, I think, but I'll go quickly through the numbers. The page 7 is the existing issue, the O2As. Bottom of page 7, bottom of column 2, there's $15,640,000 outstanding. The interest rates are in column 3, and you'll see how much lower they are in the current market, but they run from 4 to a 470, depending on the year. The debt service in column 6 is front-loaded. It's not a typical level debt service, and that's because the O2A was a refunding of like 3 other issues. So that the debt service you see here reflects the issues that O2A refunded, some of which were short. Okay, I'll just mention one thing on page 8. We'll keep looking at this, but we're suggesting that probably we don't need to refund or don't want to refund the December maturity. If we're going to close, do we really want to spend money to refund a bond that's going to mature 2 months later? But we'll look at it. If we can save a couple of bucks, we will. But for tonight, I am assuming on page 8 that we are refunding $14,025,000, i.e. the bonds maturing from 2011 to 2024. And again, we're not extending the debt. Let's skip page 9. We'll skip over. I want to go to the important page here on page 11. And that indicates to do this transaction, we'll pay off, I'm assuming we will close mid-September. We'll earn a little bit of interest, so you have $14,021,000 to pay off the old bonds. The underwriters are going to charge something to sell the bonds. Don't worry about that, whether that's high or low, because the higher it is, the lower the interest rates and vice versa. The cost of doing this, the rating, our fee, your solicitor, your bond counsel, and a few other odds and ends, the paying agent, we're estimating at $65,000. So to do this deal, and this will change a little bit, $14,210,000 is the top number. And here's the good news on the next page. This page here shows what happens if you take all the savings in 2011. And when I say savings, look on page 12, we're looking at the bottom of column 8, after expenses, $752,000. And again, if you take the new debt service, or look at the rates in column 3, 0.75 for the bonds due in 2011, that's the current market, out to 3.8. So, and you get those very, very low rates on the part of the issue that is so large, i.e. the earlier maturities in column 2. If you compare the debt service on the new deal in column 6 to the existing, if you don't do it, in column 7, that difference is the savings.
Gordon, I've got a couple of quick questions.
Yeah.
The outstanding principal in total, am I understanding it correctly?
Right now?
No. After you do the refinancing, is essentially the same as what we have today?
No, you always have to, it's always a little higher because we have to build in the cost of doing the deal.
So you're talking, so the 14,021,500.
The new deal, 14,210, is greater than the amount of bonds we're refunding.
Which is how much?
Which is on page 8 of $14,025,025.
Okay, so
and basically the difference is is the cost of doing the transaction.
All right, let me,
But again, the interest rates are so much lower that what you really want to look at is the difference in the debt service.
okay, but hang on, I want to answer my question. The term of the outstanding principal is all of it's maturing by the end of 2024, so there's no increase in the duration.
We're not extending
Okay.
the debt.
So,
All we're
The-
doing is reducing, in this model on page 12, reducing 2011 and keeping the other years more or less the same. You can see the ups and downs.
so the total amount of interest through the life of the bonds today, if I didn't do anything, what's
Okay.
my total interest expense?
Okay, go back to that other page. Let's just look at the bonds being refunded, which is the 14,025,000, okay? The total interest payable is the bottom, page 8, bottom of column 4,
3.4.
3,383,000.
Okay, now if I refinance based on your proposal, where's my total interest expense?
Okay, look on bottom of column 4, 2,168,000.
So by refinancing over the life of the bonds, I save approximately 1.2 million in interest expense?
Whatever that difference is, plus less, remember,
Less.
you're borrowing more principal.
Right.
And those two numbers
Right, but,
is where you get the savings.
right, but I want to make sure that what I want to make sure is I'm not incurring additional interest expense simply to save it next year. And if I understand the math, the current interest expense is 3.383.
Right.
The interest expense based on your proposed refinancing on page 12 is 2,168.
Right.
So I've got, the difference between 3.3 and 2.2 is basically 1.1, and I've got, I don't know, about $200,000 in issuance costs.
Yeah. Yeah. That should be, I don't know. I can't explain the difference, but we're saving a lot of interest, and I'll have to sit down and come up to get the exact numbers, but we're saving a lot of interest, less the increased principal,
The issuance costs are underwriter's discount,
and the fixed cost of
cost of
$65,000.
issuance, plus the miscellaneous of 2,715, so it's about a little shy of 190,000, right?
So, right. 185, yeah. Something just slightly less than
So
200.
if you take the 1.215 million, which is the savings and interest, and back out nearly 200,000, the savings overall to the township, most of which is up front, is nearly $1 million, a little bit over $1 million.
Well, I'm getting 752,000, but I'll have to figure out why. I feel confident in the 752,000 number.
Can I ask you a question
Well, it
about
probably
the,
has to deal with the interest rates over the years.
Well, with the 752 versus the 1.1 is probably the difference in the increase in principal. You're issuing.
I'll have to go through the numbers, but I feel confident that this number in the box is the
Right.
net savings to Radnor after issuance costs.
Right, but you're combining, I think, the interest and principal, because how much additional, I thought you said it was $400,000 of, we have 14025 outstanding, and we're pushing out 142, so that's 200. Looks a little bit off, but we'd have to see the math. But I suspect that's the difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, there's an alternative plan on page 13 where we spread the savings out, and again, you don't need to decide this tonight. I'm just giving you a couple alternatives, and you may want to do it over 2 years, but if you spread the savings out over 3 years, you get a little bit more savings, but again, it might be something that instead of having a one-time benefit, which would not be available then for the 2012 budget, you may want to think about something that looks like the plan on page 13. And the way we do that is simply to rejigger the way the principal comes due in those early years. So we can do the savings over 4 years, over 2 years. We can put it all in 1 year, or 3 for that matter.
When do we have to make that decision?
Sometime in July.
Bob, will you be prepared to make a recommendation by then as to which way to go?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think what Gordon was talking about is to spread the savings out over at least a 3-year period, hopefully out to a 5-year period would be better. But we'll have a recommendation for you.
Okay.
On the 5-year, we would certainly want to run this by Harrisburg so that they would approve it, because they like to see debt service to be level or descending. If we have abnormally low debt service in the first 5 years by virtue of doing this, we just want to be sure before we sell the bonds that they're okay with it, because after we sell the bonds, everything gets submitted, and we want to have their prior approval on anything that looks a little unusual. Usually they say okay, but again, we want to be sure that they're not going to reject the application because we don't comply with the law.
Gordon, can I just ask a few questions about the cost, the $65,000 cost? Is that, when you come up with the 5.3% savings as a percentage of refunded part, is that
What we do is
include that?
we divide the savings after costs by the amount of bonds we are refunding, the $14,025,000. And the reason that we have a percentage here is that people say this is a very healthy savings, but a lot of people, when we're a lot lower, say, well, what's a number above which we should do it, but below which we shouldn't?
Right, and the last time we said 3% was
Yeah.
the magic number.
So 3% in my book is sort of an industry standard, although in times are tough. You see a lot of 2%ers and 2.5s, and I've seen them done for 1. But we are well above the 3% threshold. So if we see a rise in interest rates over the next month and 2 months, you know, we're still probably going to have a pretty darn good savings. And that is one thing I wanted to mention, and that is 10 basis points. And that's on page 14. 0.1%, top to bottom, will affect the savings by $75,000. Now, chances are, so if we see a rise in interest rates of 0.1% between now and the time we sell, that's what you'd lose. You're probably not going to happen. It might be 5 basis points in the early years, 7 in the middle, and 12 on the long end. It might average out to 10. But just to give you some, if we see a reduction in rates, now rates were down again today, you know, the treasuries were down a lot. If we get a further reduction in interest rates, we could be, you know, we could be a lot higher. But it's locked in the day of the sale.
Okay, and what are those $65,000 of costs? Because I
have them in
recall
the-
from the last issuance, the
I can-
last refinance we
I
did.
can guess at it.
Yeah.
I put down about 18 for bond counsel, 25, and these are just, I'm just going by memory here. 25 for us. Rating fee, I think, is like, let me think, about 12. We have to, you know, 1,000 for a paying agent. We have maybe another 1,000 to redeem the bonds. We have the solicitor. John, I don't remember how much your fee was last time, but probably a couple $1,000. Anyhow.
Now, did those fees go up because it's a bigger issue? Because I think we paid 15.
You paid less.
Last time.
Last year, the bond counsel fee was extremely low.
Okay.
There was a bit of, his quote was 9,000, and because of, we had some complexities, he wound up charging 10. And in coming up with the 65, I thought to myself, there's no way we're going to get a larger firm in here to do this deal for $10,000. And in fact, the proposals reflect that. They're more in the 15 to 16,000 range.
I recall that we had Archer and Griner submit a proposal and Cozen O'Connor submit a proposal.
Okay, this time around, we have 3, and I had given a list to your staff, and there are 3.
Who were they from?
Cozen O'Connor, Pepper Hamilton, and Blank Rome. Now, I was not involved in last year's, so I wasn't on board last year when you all went through that. So I don't even remember who. I do know Cozen got one, but and George Amon, I don't remember who else. But we have 3 on the table. If you want to get more, we have time.
John, just out of curiosity, were you aware, did your firm not bid?
We don't do We don't do bond work.
Oh, that was Neil's firm, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
Archer
sorry.
and Griner does bond work.
Got my
but-
law firm.
I mean, I would get as many bids as you can that, are familiar with this. My recollection is, I think the low bid for bond counsel was like $9,000 or $10,000 on the last one. Because we were in the firehouse the night you awarded that, and I think it ranged from 9,000 to maybe 15, something
It was
like
High
that.
Schwartz, it was George Amon.
Right.
Right. George was a low bidder, and I think you had 2 or 3 other bids, but I would suggest you get as many as you can, because it is pretty competitive.
Notes say last time we had bids from High Schwartz, Archer and Griner, Cozen, and Pepper.
Well, the 3 that we've gotten bids from so far are all big firms.
Right.
And you would expect their fee structures to be rather high. So if there's another firm like a High Schwartz out there that is a little hungrier, I think we should solicit a bid from those folks.
I can give your staff a couple of more names of smaller firms.
Yeah, we can, I mean, I can ask in our office who else, because our role as the township solicitor is a lot reduced compared to your bond attorney in this type of a situation, but we're involved in a lot of financing in the various municipalities. I don't know off the top of my head of a small firm other than with George Amon there. He was pretty much the only one that did the bond work at High Schwartz. But there may be some in Center City that are smaller that we can find. But I would try to get, I think it's pretty competitive though, Hank, even with the large firms. Yeah, used to be the bond fees, legal fees were very, very high. But that's probably 10 years ago, or more or less. But it's pretty competitive. So I would get as many bids as possible that you can recommend and I can recommend.
The smaller firms tend to be in smaller cities like Westchester. There's one and one in Morrisville. So I can give Curtin and Hefner.
Curtin and Hefner?
Yeah. So
Yeah, they do some,
the final thing is that we're suggesting that you do internet bidding in order to get the best rate of interest and full transparency. And Haverford did it, and you can see here how many bids they got. It's a true auction. Haverford had 7 bidders that bid 55 times. So it's in any of you on up at the board here, on the staff, can watch the bidding. It only takes 10 or 15 minutes, a lot of action in a short period of time.
Is there a disadvantage to doing that? Are you at higher risk of, market quirks?
We're seeing this year that the rates on the competitives are coming in quite a bit lower. The difference between the first bid at a 387 and the last bid, or in the winner, was 370. That's 17 basis points difference between the first bid and the winning bid, and I told you 10 basis points is worth about $75,000. So,
There's some sort of minimum. I mean, what happens if you go out to the internet market and don't get what you're looking for?
well, we don't have to accept them.
Okay, you're not
If we
locked in.
No. It's not accepted until the board enacts the ordinance
Okay.
that night. So if interest rates go haywire, or there's something that means that the bidders don't want to do it, there's something going on in the market, we could, if we know ahead of time, we can cancel the sale, or we can take the bids, come up here and talk about it, and decide to delay it. You're not locked in until you all vote.
George, what's this activation of 2-minute rule?
The 2-minute rule means that if a winning bid comes in within the last 2 minutes, the auction is automatically extended 2 minutes. That's for your benefit. That prevents somebody coming in with a second left to go, and the other guys don't have a chance to better him. And you'll notice that this auction for Haverford was supposed to be over at 11:15, and because of the extension, was not over till 11:22. People kept bidding. They wanted it. And Radnor has a great name in the market. So,
Can you just quickly explain to me, if the call date is December, and we're doing this in August, I
or
mean,
we close, let's say, September 15th.
okay, is there a
So
penalty for that? How can we do that?
what we would do is simply put the money with the paying agent, whoever that's, or with the escrow agent, whoever's the current paying agent. I don't know, it might be TD Bank, whoever, and they will invest it in either a treasury bill if it comes due on the right day, or a money market fund that invests only in U.S. Treasuries to earn a little bit of interest between the time we close and the time the bonds get called in. That simple. Nothing risky. It's better to close in December. We save money. We don't have that, but we risk by delaying the deal. If we close on the day that the bonds are callable, we would sell in November. I would be hesitant to say, let's wait, because if we see higher interest rates, we're going to lose a lot more in the rate than we save by not having the,
Any
And
further questions?
Just one last thing. Will our new finance director be able to participate in this decision-making process as we move forward, even though he's,
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and he has been involved with this
Okay.
in the past.
okay, good.
That's great. Thank you very much, Gordon.
Okay, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2010-21, designation of a PEMA, an agent for PEMA reimbursements. Move to introduce this.
Second?
Any discussion?
Yes, just give us a summary, excuse me, give us a summary of what this is.
Well, all we're doing is telling the state that Bob Zenkowski is the guy they send the money to. So he's,
Yeah, I could give you a quick, it's, as you know, we were hit with those pretty devastating snowstorms in February. Bill Hagan, Dan Malloy, and I have been working with the County Emergency Management Department. And recently, the PEMA has finally opened the process of possibly getting reimbursed through them for some of the costs of those storms. And part of that requirement is that we have a designated agent. And of course, usually that's the township manager. And PEMA has lots of forms. And one of the forms they require is that as a board that you appoint an official agent to sign the documents on behalf of the township, which of course would be your manager. And that's basically what you'll be doing tonight.
Bill, if they make the decision to provide some funding, will that occur this year, next year?
Well, depending how quickly Harrisburg moves, yes. It's been going on for months, and this is just part of the stack of paperwork we have to submit to PEMA in hopes of receiving that reimbursement. There's no guarantee what that amount will be if we get it, but the feeling is from our contact with them that it would be before the end of the year.
Do we have a sense of how much money it might be?
We submitted, Dan, I believe it's, Bill would know, Bill Hagan and I have been working on the application. I think it was a little, we submitted all our costs. I think ours is about $115,000. It doesn't mean that PEMA will give us all of that. It depends on the pool of money they have available to disperse to the county and how much of that percentage-wise is ours. And then, hopefully we could get it all back, but, whatever we can get, the most we get is $115,000.
And the one thing is that they opened it up an extra day. Originally, we were told it was a 48-hour window, and Delaware County was one of the municipalities where they actually extended it to a 72-hour period. So Bill had to redo a lot of the numbers because the original was just 48, and so.
When you say 72, you're talking about the measurement time of the costs incurred over 3 days versus 2 days?
Yes.
Correct.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, pass this down, and we need to get a re-signature. Any new business?
I just have one announcement. The Friends of the Willows Cottage is holding a summer solstice celebration this Friday, next Friday, June 18th. I believe it's going to be at 7 p.m. If you're interested in attending this event, you can go to willowscottage.org to buy tickets. The event will be in support of the cottage, of restoration of the cottage, and the event will have music, food, and will include a live auction with items from local artisans and various things that are being produced at the cottage. So please come on out to that event and go to willowscottage.org to purchase your tickets. Tickets are $50.
Last chance to see the before, because work starts in July. Then you can come back again in October and see the after.
Any further new business? Any old business? Call.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.